Welcome to Audiobooks, where growth meets action and the principles of personal development are transformed into practical strategies you can apply every day to accelerate progress, sharpen your skills, and expand your potential. In today's audiobook, we present How Successful People Grow, Daily Growth and Self-Development, a guide designed to help you understand the mindset, habits, and consistent practices that allow highly successful individuals to evolve continuously and turn ambition into meaningful results. Before we begin, if you enjoy content about personal growth, success, and self-development, please subscribe to Audiobooks, like this video, and share it with someone who wants to grow and improve every day. Your support helps us continue creating valuable audiobook content for listeners around the world. True growth is not built on quick fixes or temporary motivation. It is built through consistent daily improvement, intentional reflection, and disciplined habits that gradually strengthen your abilities and expand your opportunities. This audiobook explores how successful individuals commit to lifelong learning, create routines that reinforce progress, and develop the resilience necessary to keep improving even when challenges arise. Throughout this audiobook, you will discover how to build daily routines that support growth, develop valuable skills, cultivate curiosity, strengthen discipline, and maintain momentum in both personal and professional life. You will also learn that growth is not an abstract idea, it is a practical process, driven by small actions repeated consistently over time. When these actions compound, they lead to meaningful transformation and long-term success. By internalizing these principles, you will gain the tools to build powerful habits, optimize your routines, and create a lifestyle centered on continuous development and measurable progress. Now, prepare to discover the mindset, habits, and systems that allow successful people to grow relentlessly, refine their abilities, and achieve lasting transformation through deliberate daily practice. This audiobook is divided into 8 chapters, each designed to guide you from understanding the principles of growth to implementing actionable daily routines, self-reflection practices, skill development strategies, and long-term self-improvement systems. As we begin with the first chapter, remember that growth is a choice exercised every day, and that the small, deliberate actions you take consistently define the trajectory of your personal and professional life. Let's begin with Chapter 1, The Growth Mindset. Building the foundation of continuous self-improvement. In this chapter, titled The Growth Mindset, Building the Foundation of Continuous Self-Improvement, we explore how successful people embrace a mindset that views challenges as opportunities, failures as lessons, and potential as limitless, while emphasizing that growth begins with the conscious choice to cultivate curiosity, resilience, and relentless self-awareness. The first principle of growth is recognizing that your abilities, intelligence, and skills are not fixed, but can be developed through effort, reflection, and deliberate practice. By adopting this mindset, listeners gain the ability to approach obstacles strategically, seek learning in adversity, and convert setbacks into stepping stones that accelerate personal and professional development. Every decision, action, and interaction becomes an opportunity to refine thought processes, strengthen discipline, and expand capability. When framed through the lens of growth, the narrator emphasizes that developing a growth mindset requires intentionality, because without conscious awareness, default thinking patterns tend to reinforce limitation, fear, or complacency. Successful people deliberately challenge assumptions, seek feedback, and reflect critically on performance to uncover blind spots, identify areas for improvement, and continuously evolve. Listeners are encouraged to approach daily routines, interactions, and responsibilities as laboratories for learning, applying deliberate effort to sharpen skills, broaden perspective, and enhance capability. Growth is therefore both a mindset and a structured practice, requiring active engagement and disciplined consistency. One of the most significant lessons from this chapter is that curiosity is the engine of growth, because the drive to explore, ask questions, and seek new experiences expands knowledge, perspective, and opportunity. Successful individuals cultivate insatiable curiosity, probing deeply into subjects, systems, and human behavior to gain insight, discover patterns, and generate innovative solutions. Listeners are encouraged to practice active learning, research beyond comfort zones, and challenge assumptions, ensuring that intellectual and personal growth is continuous rather than passive or sporadic. Another key insight lies in embracing challenges, because comfort and repetition reinforce stagnation, while discomfort stimulates adaptation, learning, and resilience. Leaders in growth-oriented mindsets actively seek situations that stretch their abilities, create uncertainty, and demand problem-solving. By confronting difficult tasks, listeners enhance mental toughness, strengthen cognitive flexibility, and build confidence in navigating complex circumstances that would deter those with fixed mindsets. Challenges become tools for skill enhancement rather than obstacles to avoid. The importance of this chapter lies in demonstrating that mindset shapes results, because consistent self-improvement emerges from intentional thinking rather than luck, opportunity, or fleeting motivation. By cultivating growth-oriented mental patterns, listeners position themselves to recognize opportunity, optimize effort, and take deliberate action aligned with long-term objectives. A growth mindset produces compounding advantages over time, transforming small daily efforts into measurable, long-lasting success. By internalizing these principles, listeners gain the ability to reflect critically, act deliberately, and respond constructively to setbacks or failure. Mindset anchors the process of learning, reinforcing self-discipline, emotional resilience, and strategic thinking, ensuring that every experience contributes meaningfully to development. This approach transforms challenges into catalysts, mistakes into lessons, and potential into realized capability. This chapter also highlights the role of accountability, because self-awareness is reinforced when individuals track progress, set benchmarks, and evaluate outcomes. By measuring improvement, soliciting feedback, and holding themselves responsible for growth, listeners ensure that intentional effort produces tangible results. Accountability ensures that mindset is not merely aspirational, but operationalized through observable behaviors and consistent practice. Finally, mastering the growth mindset equips listeners with the cognitive and emotional foundation to pursue continuous self-improvement, overcome limitations, and consistently expand potential. By combining curiosity, reflection, challenge-seeking, and accountability, individuals create a framework in which daily choices and habits reinforce growth, producing predictable, long-term development that transforms both personal and professional life.
Let's move on to Chapter 2, Daily Habits for Growth, Creating Routines that Propel Success. In this chapter, titled Daily Habits for Growth, Creating Routines that Propel Success, we explore how successful people design structured, intentional daily routines that reinforce learning, skill development, and personal growth, while emphasizing that extraordinary progress is achieved not through sporadic effort, but through consistent, deliberate action embedded in everyday life. Habits act as the scaffolding of growth because they turn deliberate effort into automatic behavior, ensuring that improvement compounds over time rather than relying on fleeting motivation or inspiration. By integrating learning, reflection, and skill building into daily practice, listeners gain the ability to transform ordinary routines into high-impact catalysts for consistent self-development. The narrator emphasizes that the key to habit formation is specificity and consistency, because vague intentions fail to produce measurable results, while well-defined routines reinforce focus, accountability, and progress. Successful individuals break down complex growth objectives into daily, achievable actions, ensuring that each task, practice session, or reflection period contributes directly to skill acquisition, mindset refinement, or personal development. Listeners are encouraged to adopt a structured approach to daily planning, allocating time to deliberate practice, reflection, reading, and skill reinforcement, creating a routine in which growth becomes automatic and measurable. One of the most significant lessons from this chapter is that small, incremental actions compound over time, because consistent daily habits, even when modest, produce exponential improvements in knowledge, capability, and resilience. Successful people leverage this principle by designing routines that prioritize high-leverage actions, reinforcing behaviors that produce disproportionate impact relative to effort. Listeners learn to focus on habits that strengthen both competence and confidence, ensuring that progress is continuous and cumulative rather than fragmented or sporadic. Another key insight lies in integrating self-reflection into daily routines, because reflection amplifies learning by transforming experience into actionable insight. By reviewing daily decisions, outcomes, and behaviors, listeners identify areas for improvement, recognize successes, and adjust approaches to maximize growth. Reflection ensures that habits are not merely repetitive actions, but deliberate steps toward higher performance, refined skills, and deeper self-awareness. The importance of this chapter lies in demonstrating that daily habits are the vehicle through which growth becomes predictable and sustainable. Without structure and discipline, intentions remain abstract, learning remains inconsistent, and potential is underutilized. By embedding deliberate actions into daily routines, listeners create an environment in which progress is inevitable, effort is optimized, and personal development becomes a natural consequence of consistent behavior. By internalizing these principles, listeners gain the capacity to convert intention into action, implement routines that reinforce learning, and cultivate momentum in both personal and professional development. Habits provide structure, reduce reliance on motivation, and ensure that growth is continuous, measurable, and self-reinforcing over time. This approach transforms potential into realized capability through the power of consistency. This chapter also highlights the importance of prioritization, because not all daily actions contribute equally to growth. Successful individuals identify the highest leverage behaviors, those that produce the greatest impact relative to time and effort, and design routines that emphasize these actions while minimizing low-value tasks. Listeners are encouraged to evaluate their schedules, allocate resources to high-impact growth activities, and maintain discipline to ensure habits reinforce progress rather than dissipate energy. Finally, mastering daily habits equips listeners with the practical framework to sustain growth, strengthen discipline, and accelerate personal and professional development. By combining structure, reflection, prioritization, and consistency, individuals create a lifestyle in which daily action reinforces growth, learning compounds over time, and success becomes a predictable outcome of deliberate, sustained effort. Let's now move on to Chapter 3, Lifelong Learning, Expanding Knowledge and Skills Every Day. In this chapter, titled Lifelong Learning, Expanding Knowledge and Skills Every Day, we explore how successful people deliberately cultivate curiosity, absorb new information, and develop skills continuously, while emphasizing that growth is not a finite process but a lifelong commitment to improvement, adaptation, and intellectual expansion. Leaders, innovators, and high performers recognize that knowledge is leverage. The more you learn, the more effectively you can solve problems, make decisions, and create opportunities. By integrating learning into daily routines, listeners gain the ability to transform every experience, interaction, and challenge into a source of insight, skill, and advantage, ensuring that growth is continuous and cumulative rather than sporadic or reactive. The narrator emphasizes that deliberate learning requires intentionality, because passive exposure to information rarely produces meaningful improvement. Successful people identify high-value knowledge areas, set learning objectives, and seek resources, books, courses, mentors, and practical experiences that directly contribute to skill development and decision-making. Listeners are encouraged to approach learning as both a daily habit and a strategic investment, integrating reflection, application, and repetition to ensure that knowledge is not merely acquired but internalized and actionable. One of the most significant lessons from this chapter is that applying knowledge is as important as acquiring it, because learning that is not translated into action does not produce growth. Successful people immediately implement insights, test new methods, and adjust strategies based on feedback, ensuring that knowledge compounds into competence and capability. Listeners are encouraged to take deliberate action on what they learn, experiment with application, and refine methods based on results, transforming learning into a dynamic, self-reinforcing process that produces measurable improvement over time. Another key insight lies in diversity of learning, because expanding perspective across disciplines, industries, and experiences enhances creativity, decision-making, and problem-solving. Leaders who integrate insights from multiple sources, whether technical, behavioral, or strategic, develop mental agility, recognize patterns, and identify opportunities others overlook. By adopting a multidisciplinary approach, listeners strengthen cognitive flexibility, adapt to evolving challenges, and generate innovative solutions that drive growth and performance. The importance of this chapter lies in demonstrating that consistent learning fuels continuous improvement, because incremental skill and knowledge accumulation compounds over time to create extraordinary capability. By structuring learning into daily routines, seeking feedback, and prioritizing high-impact areas, listeners transform education into an engine for sustained growth, confidence, and mastery. By internalizing these principles, listeners gain the capacity to pursue knowledge strategically, apply insights effectively, and expand skills in ways that create tangible advantage. Lifelong learning becomes both a mindset and a practical system, producing the adaptability, expertise, and judgment required to thrive in dynamic environments. Growth is no longer a passive process, but a deliberate, measurable, and continual journey toward excellence. This chapter also highlights the role of reflection in learning, because reviewing experiences, analyzing outcomes, and integrating lessons ensures that knowledge is internalized and applied effectively. By combining active learning, practical application, and reflective practice, listeners develop the capacity to improve continuously while avoiding repeated mistakes, strengthening both competence and confidence. Finally, mastering lifelong learning equips listeners with the tools, mindset, and habits required to achieve sustained self-development. By committing to consistent study, practical application, and reflection, individuals create a foundation for continuous improvement, ensuring that knowledge becomes a catalyst for growth, capability, and lasting success. Let's move on to Chapter 4, Self-Reflection, Understanding Yourself to Accelerate Growth. In this chapter, titled Self-Reflection, Understanding Yourself to Accelerate Growth, we explore how successful people regularly examine their thoughts, behaviors, and outcomes to gain insight into strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities for improvement, while emphasizing that self-awareness is the catalyst that transforms effort into deliberate, targeted growth. Reflection allows individuals to evaluate decisions, recognize patterns, and identify habits that either reinforce progress or undermine potential. By cultivating a practice of self-reflection, listeners learn to understand the causes of both success and failure, adjust strategies proactively, and make intentional choices that optimize learning, performance, and personal development. The narrator emphasizes that self-reflection is an active, disciplined practice because casual or superficial introspection rarely yields meaningful insight. Successful individuals dedicate time to evaluating their actions, assessing results, and questioning assumptions, integrating lessons into future strategies. Listeners are encouraged to journal, meditate, or conduct structured mental reviews, analyzing both outcomes and processes to gain clarity about patterns, blind spots, and areas requiring improvement. By turning reflection into a deliberate habit, individuals ensure that learning and growth are continuous rather than random or accidental. One of the most significant lessons from this chapter is that understanding your own mindset, triggers, and behavior patterns strengthens both resilience and decision-making. Leaders and high performers who recognize their biases, emotional responses, and habitual tendencies can anticipate challenges, regulate reactions, and act strategically under pressure. Listeners are encouraged to cultivate metacognition, the ability to think about thinking so that self-awareness informs choices, enhances emotional intelligence, and guides effective behavior across complex situations. Another key insight lies in using reflection to track progress and reinforce accountability, because growth is measurable only when individuals assess results against intention. By reviewing achievements, identifying gaps, and adjusting practices, listeners ensure that their daily actions remain aligned with objectives and long-term vision. Reflection converts experience into actionable insight, creating a feedback loop in which habits, behaviors, and strategies are continuously optimized for maximum growth. The importance of this chapter lies in demonstrating that self-reflection accelerates personal development, because insight into oneself enables focused effort, intentional improvement, and avoidance of repeated errors. By embedding reflective practices into daily routines, listeners gain clarity about priorities, strengthen discipline, and enhance learning efficiency, ensuring that every action contributes meaningfully to growth. By internalizing these principles, listeners gain the capacity to analyze their own decisions, behaviors, and outcomes critically, identifying leverage points for improvement and optimizing efforts over time. Self-reflection ensures that personal development is intentional, strategic, and measurable, transforming experience into insight and actions into progress. This chapter also highlights the role of emotional awareness in reflection, because understanding feelings, motivations, and responses provides insight into both performance and relationships. By evaluating emotional patterns alongside behavior, listeners enhance resilience, empathy, and effectiveness, ensuring that growth encompasses both capability and character. Finally, mastering self-reflection equips listeners with the tools, habits, and mindset to accelerate learning, refine behavior, and consistently improve performance. By cultivating disciplined insight into thoughts, actions, and outcomes, individuals transform personal experience into actionable knowledge, ensuring that growth is deliberate, measurable, and sustainable over a lifetime. Chapter 5. Resilience and Adaptability, Thriving Through Challenges. In this chapter, titled Resilience and Adaptability, Thriving Through Challenges, we explore how successful people embrace setbacks, uncertainty, and adversity as opportunities for growth, while emphasizing that the ability to recover, adjust, and persevere is a core differentiator between those who plateau and those who evolve continuously. Resilience is not simply enduring difficulty. It is the deliberate cultivation of mental strength, emotional regulation, and perspective that allows individuals to learn from challenges and emerge stronger. By developing resilience and adaptability, listeners gain the ability to maintain focus under pressure, pivot effectively when circumstances change, and convert obstacles into catalysts for improvement and opportunity. The narrator emphasizes that resilience is reinforced through daily practices, because consistent exposure to manageable challenges strengthens mental toughness and problem-solving capacity over time. Successful individuals structure routines that build endurance, reflection, and self-discipline, ensuring that setbacks are opportunities for learning rather than sources of discouragement. Listeners are encouraged to adopt strategies such as reframing difficulties, practicing gratitude, and focusing on controllable factors, which enhance both emotional stability and the capacity to act decisively in dynamic situations. One of the most significant lessons from this chapter is that adaptability amplifies growth because the ability to adjust to new information, unexpected changes, or evolving circumstances ensures that learning continues uninterrupted. High performers anticipate shifts, remain open to alternative approaches, and integrate feedback into ongoing practices. Listeners who cultivate flexibility of thought, openness to experimentation, and willingness to modify routines strengthen their capacity to maintain progress regardless of external disruptions. Another key insight lies in embracing discomfort as a growth mechanism, because stepping beyond comfort zones stimulates skill development, confidence, and resilience. Successful people deliberately pursue challenges that stretch abilities, confront fears, and expose weaknesses, recognizing that true growth occurs at the edge of capability. Listeners are encouraged to integrate deliberate challenges into daily practice, balancing risk and support to ensure that discomfort leads to tangible development rather than discouragement. The importance of this chapter lies in demonstrating that resilience and adaptability are not innate traits, but cultivated skills that enable sustained growth. By learning to navigate uncertainty, recover from setbacks, and pivot effectively, listeners ensure that every obstacle becomes an opportunity to reinforce skills, deepen insight, and enhance long-term capability. Resilience transforms challenges from threats into structured experiences that accelerate development. By internalizing these principles, listeners gain the capacity to respond constructively to adversity, maintain momentum in the face of obstacles, and continuously improve despite changing circumstances. Resilient and adaptable individuals remain engaged, confident, and capable of making decisions under pressure, ensuring that growth is consistent and sustainable. This approach converts difficulties into learning experiences and strengthens the foundation for both personal and professional advancement. This chapter also highlights the role of mindset in resilience, because the interpretation of events, failures, or criticism shapes the response and subsequent action. By adopting a perspective focused on learning, opportunity, and proactive problem-solving, listeners reinforce mental strength, enhance confidence, and accelerate recovery, ensuring that setbacks produce growth rather than stagnation. Finally, mastering resilience and adaptability equips listeners with the tools to thrive under pressure, embrace challenges proactively, and sustain continuous development. By cultivating mental toughness, flexibility, and a proactive approach to adversity, individuals ensure that growth becomes predictable, measurable, and enduring across all areas of life. Let's now move on to Chapter 6, Skill Mastery, Developing Expertise Through Deliberate Practicing. This chapter, titled Skill Mastery, Developing Expertise Through Deliberate Practice, we explore how successful people refine their abilities systematically, using targeted, intentional practice to transform knowledge and potential into high-level performance, while emphasizing that true mastery is the result of focused effort, reflection, and iteration rather than innate talent or luck. Skill development is accelerated when deliberate practice is structured around specific objectives, feedback, and measurable progress, ensuring that effort is directed toward high-impact improvement rather than random repetition. By integrating deliberate practice into daily routines, listeners gain the ability to strengthen strengths, address weaknesses, and produce measurable growth over time. The narrator emphasizes that mastery requires both focus and discipline, because repeated effort without intentional structure rarely produces expertise. Successful individuals break skills into components, identify areas for refinement, and systematically practice those elements with concentration and feedback loops. Listeners are encouraged to design practice routines that are deliberate, measurable, and progressively challenging, ensuring that each session contributes meaningfully to cumulative competence. Mastery is therefore both a cognitive and behavioral process, requiring attention, repetition, and refinement over extended periods. One of the most significant lessons from this chapter is that feedback is essential for growth because external perspective identifies blind spots, corrects errors, and accelerates improvement. High performers actively seek feedback from mentors, coaches, peers, and objective measures, integrating guidance into practice to optimize skill acquisition. Listeners are encouraged to approach feedback constructively, viewing it as a tool for refinement rather than criticism, and to adjust techniques, strategies, or approaches based on evidence to ensure continual progress. Another key insight lies in intentional challenge, because pushing beyond current capability stimulates adaptation, innovation, and accelerated learning. Successful people deliberately engage tasks that stretch skill level, create pressure, and demand problem-solving. Listeners are encouraged to balance repetition with increasingly difficult challenges, ensuring that practice remains purposeful, growth-focused, and aligned with long-term mastery objectives. The importance of this chapter lies in demonstrating that skill mastery is cumulative and deliberate, because expertise emerges from structured, consistent, and focused effort rather than from talent or occasional effort. By practicing deliberately, reflecting on performance, and applying feedback, listeners convert potential into capability, building a foundation of competence that supports achievement in multiple domains. Mastery is the product of intentional, repeated action combined with insight and adjustment. By internalizing these principles, listeners gain the capacity to learn faster, perform more effectively, and develop high-level competence in areas that matter most to personal and professional growth. Deliberate practice reinforces discipline, focus, and confidence, ensuring that skills are developed efficiently, applied reliably, and continuously refined. This approach transforms daily effort into measurable expertise, producing tangible outcomes and strengthening long-term growth. This chapter also highlights the role of patience and persistence, because mastery requires time, consistent effort, and resilience in the face of setbacks. Listeners are encouraged to embrace the long-term process of skill development, maintaining commitment, focus, and discipline while integrating reflection and adjustment. Persistence ensures that effort compounds over time, turning incremental improvement into expertise, and producing results that are both predictable and sustainable. Finally, mastering skill development equips listeners with the tools to achieve high-level competence, accelerate growth, and maintain continuous self-improvement. By combining deliberate practice, structured feedback, and intentional challenge, individuals ensure that daily effort produces measurable progress, transforming potential into capability and laying the foundation for long-term personal and professional success. Chapter 7, Systems for Growth, Aligning Habits, Goals, and Daily Action. In this chapter, titled Systems for Growth, Aligning Habits, Goals, and Daily Action, we explore how successful people create frameworks, routines, and structures that reinforce consistent self-improvement, while emphasizing that growth is most powerful when it is embedded in predictable systems rather than left to chance or willpower alone. Systems function as the scaffolding of success because they translate intentions into action, ensuring that learning, reflection, and skill development occur reliably each day. By designing daily routines, tracking progress, and integrating feedback loops, listeners gain the tools to transform sporadic effort into compounding growth, creating momentum that produces measurable advancement over time. The narrator emphasizes that alignment is critical, Because habits and routines only produce meaningful results when they are directly connected to long-term objectives and personal development priorities. Successful individuals structure each day around activities that reinforce goals, strengthen skills, and deepen knowledge, ensuring that effort consistently contributes to meaningful outcomes. Listeners are encouraged to evaluate their current routines, identify high-leverage activities, and eliminate distractions or low-value tasks that dilute focus and impede growth. One of the most significant lessons from this chapter is that feedback and tracking amplify system effectiveness, because monitoring performance allows for adjustment, refinement, and course correction. High performers measure progress against benchmarks, reflect on results, and iterate practices to ensure that actions remain aligned with objectives. Listeners are encouraged to establish mechanisms for recording insights, evaluating progress, and refining systems continuously, transforming routines into dynamic engines of growth that adapt to evolving challenges and goals. Another key insight lies in consistency and repetition, because growth compounds when effort is applied reliably over time. Systems reinforce discipline by embedding habits into structured routines, reducing reliance on fluctuating motivation or willpower. By executing high-impact practices consistently, listeners ensure that daily action produces cumulative improvement, building capability, confidence, and competence systematically. The importance of this chapter lies in demonstrating that systems are the bridge between intention and outcome. Without structure, even highly motivated individuals may struggle to sustain effort, translate learning into skill, or achieve meaningful growth. By embedding deliberate routines and habits into a coherent system, listeners convert abstract goals into predictable, actionable processes that produce measurable, long-term results. By internalizing these principles, listeners gain the capacity to design, implement, and maintain systems that maximize efficiency, reinforce learning, and ensure continuous progress. Structured systems allow effort to be optimized, feedback to be leveraged, and habits to compound, producing growth that is both deliberate and sustainable. This approach transforms daily action into consistent improvement, providing the scaffolding required for long-term personal and professional development. This chapter also highlights the role of reflection within systems, because periodic review ensures that routines remain aligned with evolving objectives, opportunities, and challenges. Leaders in growth-oriented systems continuously assess effectiveness, remove friction, and adapt processes, ensuring that effort produces maximum leverage and that growth trajectories are maintained. Finally, mastering systems for growth equips listeners with the tools to integrate habits, goals, and routines into a cohesive, self-reinforcing framework. By combining consistency, measurement, feedback, and alignment, individuals ensure that daily action produces predictable advancement, compounding effort into capability, mastery, and long-term achievement.
Chapter 8: Integration and Sustained Development, Turning Growth into a Lifestyle. Line. This chapter, titled Integration and Sustained Development, Turning Growth into a Lifestyle, we explore how successful people embed self-improvement into every aspect of daily life, creating a culture of continuous development that produces consistent, long-term results, while emphasizing that growth is most effective when it becomes habitual, intentional, and integrated into identity rather than an isolated activity. Integration ensures that learning, skill development, reflection, resilience, and systems operate in harmony, reinforcing one another to create momentum and prevent stagnation. By adopting growth as a lifestyle, listeners gain the ability to turn deliberate action into enduring habits, transforming incremental daily improvement into sustained, compounding results. The narrator emphasizes that sustaining growth requires both discipline and adaptability, because long-term development depends on the ability to adjust strategies, embrace new information, and respond proactively to challenges without losing focus or momentum. Successful individuals combine routine, reflection, and continuous learning with flexibility, ensuring that their personal development remains relevant, effective, and aligned with evolving goals. Listeners are encouraged to review their progress regularly, refine habits, and integrate feedback into daily routines to maintain consistent growth across all areas of life. One of the most significant lessons from this chapter is that integration transforms isolated effort into cumulative impact, because aligning mindset, habits, learning, and practice ensures that every action contributes to development rather than occurring randomly. By connecting daily practices with long-term objectives, listeners strengthen the compounding effect of deliberate effort, ensuring that small, consistent improvements produce meaningful change over time. This integration allows growth to become predictable, measurable, and sustainable. Another key insight lies in accountability and community, because growth is accelerated when individuals engage with mentors, peers, and support networks. Successful people leverage feedback, shared learning, and collaborative challenge to refine skills, sustain motivation, and broaden perspective. Listeners are encouraged to seek environments that reinforce growth, provide constructive challenge, and celebrate progress, ensuring that development is both accelerated and resilient. The importance of this chapter lies in demonstrating that sustained self-development requires intentional integration rather than sporadic effort. By embedding learning, reflection, deliberate practice, and systems into daily life, listeners transform personal growth into a reliable, self-reinforcing process that produces consistent improvement, capability, and achievement. Integration ensures that development is holistic, strategic, and aligned with long-term objectives. By internalizing these principles, listeners gain the capacity to create a self-sustaining lifestyle of growth, in which learning, reflection, and skill development occur naturally as part of daily life. Integrated development strengthens resilience, enhances decision-making, and amplifies capability, ensuring that progress is continuous, measurable, and aligned with personal and professional goals. Growth becomes not an occasional pursuit, but a defining aspect of identity and action. This chapter also highlights the role of reflection, evaluation, and adjustment, because continuous improvement requires awareness of progress, obstacles, and emerging opportunities. By integrating review processes into routines, listeners ensure that habits, strategies, and learning practices remain effective and aligned with goals, reinforcing the compounding effect of deliberate growth. Finally, mastering integration and sustained development equips listeners with the tools to make growth a permanent, predictable, and measurable part of life. By embedding daily habits, reflection, learning, and skill development into a cohesive lifestyle, individuals transform potential into capability, action into achievement, and intention into continuous, lifelong self-improvement. Conclusion: making growth a way of life. Years we conclude how successful people grow, daily growth and self-development. It becomes clear that sustained personal growth is not a matter of luck, talent, or occasional effort, but the result of deliberate mindset, structured habits, reflection, and consistent action applied over time. Over the course of these 8 chapters, you have explored the power of a growth mindset, the importance of daily habits, the role of lifelong learning, self-reflection, resilience, skill mastery, systems for growth, and the integration of all these principles into a lifestyle that continuously produces improvement. You have seen that growth is most effective when it is intentional, measurable, and embedded into daily routines, and that every small, consistent action compounds over time to create extraordinary results. By internalizing these principles, listeners gain the tools to expand potential, enhance capability, and sustain momentum, ensuring that growth becomes not just an activity, but a defining characteristic of their personal and professional life. If this audiobook has inspired you to elevate your personal development, strengthen daily habits, or integrate growth into every area of your life, start today by implementing one small, deliberate action that aligns with your highest priority objective, and commit to practicing it consistently. Subscribe to Frem Audiobooks for more insights on self-development, lifelong learning, and actionable strategies that turn intention into measurable progress. Subscribe to access guidance on habit formation, skill mastery, and reflection techniques that reinforce continuous growth. Leave a review to support the mission of helping listeners create intentional, high-impact development routines. And share this audiobook with anyone seeking to unlock their potential and sustain lifelong self-improvement. Remember, growth is not a goal to achieve once. It is a daily practice, a mindset, and a lifestyle, and by applying the principles outlined in this audiobook, you can ensure that every day contributes meaningfully to your personal and professional evolution.